Fab. Well, welcome everyone to the Politics and International Relations Digital Open Day. My name's Vic, so I'm one of the lecturers in the Politics and International Relations Department. I focus on, if I can get the screen to move, which I can't. There we go. I'm a lecturer in political theory, so I basically focus on political ideas and how they might change the world, and how we can kind of evaluate the world through ideas and then maybe chart through a way to a more kind of idealistic outcome for all sorts of forms of inequality. And mostly I focus on race and caste in South Asia and things like that. So what I'm going to do is run you through very, very briefly what's on offer here at the University of Leicester in terms of politics and international relations, and then the various joint degrees you can also do. Before I hand over to Lavanya and James, who are two of our student ambassadors and two of our current students, who'll be really happy to answer any questions you might have about what it's like to be a student at Leicester, what the course is like, but even more unacademic things like what the accommodation is like, what the nightlife is like, what the cost of living is like, all of that kind of stuff that's really, really important to students as much as the course itself. So if you want to put questions in the chat, if you don't feel like you're verbally asking them, that's also totally fine. I'll read them out to James and Lavanya at the end, and they'll try to address them. So why Leicester, I guess, is one of the most important questions you're probably considering. I always think Leicester's one of those kind of Goldilocks universities that it's just perfectly placed for a mix of being, an old university with a traditional pedigree, very old research traditions, highly regarded for its research and so on. We've been doing politics at Leicester since the 1940s. The university is now in its second centenary, or its second 100 years. So, it's a well-established university with a long pedigree, does pretty well in the national rankings. Is always in or in recent years anyway, has been in the top 30s for UK universities, but also I think is very, very welcoming and inclusive, and most members of staff and students are very, very approachable. So Leicester's sort of slogan not so long ago used to be elite but not elitist. It's a very well regarded university, but it doesn't feel like you're walking into a world of kind of overly snobbish academics who don't want to talk to you and that kind of thing. And I think that's kind of perfect in that sense, and it's what our students really, really like about it. So if that's the kind of institution you'd like to go to, then I would definitely consider the University of Leicester as somewhere you might want to study politics and international relations. I won't dwell on the kind of marketing stats too much, but there are some of the rankings that I just mentioned. So depending on which newspaper you look at, which university ranking system you look at, it does differ a bit, because they all put different emphases on different criteria. So The Guardian, for instance, where politics came 29th this year, puts a big emphasis on the student experience. It really takes student experience and student outcomes very, very seriously in terms of its weighting, and then ranks the departments and the universities. Others, like the Complete University Guide, Times University Guide, tend to put more emphasis on things like research and funding, less so on the student experience. So as you can see, Leicester still does very, very well in that, but it does tend to change the numbers by a few points here and there. So I would just have a look at all of these and kind of look at the background and see, what's important to you. Is it student experience? Is it research, pedigree, all that kind of stuff? Obviously, it's a mix of those things that go into making a good university. But as you can see, Leicester's always as I always say, nipping at the heels of the Russell Group. We're not a member of the Russell Group, but we're in that sort of general grouping of universities at the top quartile of the table. So one thing I think is most important out of all of those rankings is this thing the government calls the Teaching Excellence Framework. So every year, universities are basically graded on how well and effectively they teach. This is quite heavily based on student opinions of how their university classes and lectures go. And it's basically like an Olympic system. So it's bronze, silver, gold. And Leicester in 2023, in the last one, was very proud to get gold. There's actually not many universities who get gold. So you might be surprised to find certain universities which we think of as very prestigious, I won't name names, but you can probably guess which ones they are, do very, very well for research and all of that kind of stuff, have very long pedigrees, but often get silver or something like that in the Teaching Excellence Framework, because they're more inclined to just give you a reading list and tell you to go away and read it and do an essay, rather than kind of put in the spade work of doing kind of really, really effective and diverse face-to-face teaching. So if you're someone who knows that just being told to go away and read a load of stuff in the library is not your style of learning, that you'd like a bit more of a sort of active form of learning, one in which your tutors and seminar leaders and lecturers are kind of more available to you on a day-to-day basis, then certainly not just the University of Leicester, but all of these universities that have a gold rating in the Teaching Excellence Framework are ones that you want to be looking out for. Another thing that I'm sure is very important to everyone, given the current cost of living sort of rise and crisis, is not just accommodation, but the quality of that accommodation as it relates to price. Now, if this was an on-campus open day, you'd have the opportunity to see some of the new accommodation that the university has invested in places like the Freeman's Common part of the campus. Lots of really up-to-date accommodation, ensuite, with lots of social spaces, lots of areas for students to hang out and that kind of thing. So the university is really keen to make sure that students have a comfortable and really kind of a nice university experience outside of the classroom as well, that they have the facilities to kind of make their 3 years really enjoyable. And you can see in Leicester that you have guaranteed accommodation in year one, and that starts at £69 per week, which is really not bad value given the current sort of rates of accommodation in most university towns in the country. Leicester's frequently rated in the top few, top 3 or 4 university cities in the country for cost of living. In addition to that, you have for accommodation that's maybe 15-20 minutes away from the lecture theatre or your classroom, you have a free shuttle bus that will bring you in for your nice 9 a.m. 10 a.m. lecture, so you don't have to worry about making sure you've got change for the bus and that kind of thing. All very kind of easy, accessible for students. So again, do have a look at the universities you're thinking of applying to, in terms of are you going to have a part-time job alongside your degree to make ends meet, or can you be in a place where actually you're not going to have to sacrifice all of those kinds of recreational activities because you don't have enough money to pay the rent for where you're staying and that kind of thing. So as I was saying, there's been a lot of investment on campus. The university's invested, up to £500 million over the last few years, not just in accommodation, but new student union space, new sports facilities, redoing the Botanic Garden, all of this kind of stuff that's really as important to university life as the actual teaching. And I think one of the really nice things about the campus as well, in terms of being up to date, it's also quite sort of neatly enclosed as a community. So we have one main campus where everything is, and then a slightly smaller campus literally 5-10 minutes down the road. And that is that real sense that you're part of a community, that you haven't got one of these universities that's just sprawled across an entire city and you're having to go from one end of the city to the other end in the morning just to get to classes. And if that's the type of university experience you're looking for, I think Leicester's a really nice place to be. It's very much a case of, I can give a lecture and then say to a student who might have a question, shall we just pop across to my office across the road and we can have a chat about something you didn't understand, and so on. That can be quite difficult at universities where the lecture theatre is half an hour away from the staff member's office and that kind of thing, which think about big cities like Manchester, London and so on. That's often the case. So there is this really nice kind of community collegiate feel about Leicester that's nice if that's what you're looking for. I appreciate that some students are looking for the big city experience, so if that is what you're after, then obviously Leicester might not be for you. But we are also really well placed to get to big cities if you want to. Birmingham's an hour away, London's an hour away, Sheffield's an hour away. So you're very well placed if 1 week, one night a week you do fancy kind of trip to a bigger city or that kind of thing. But I like to think we're a very inviting community. Class sizes in year one are not that big. So the biggest really the year one intake gets in politics and international relations is around 150. Might be a bit lower than that, might be a few students higher than that, but that's actually quite small. When you think about some universities in first year, as many as 500, 600, 700 politics students. So you will get to know everyone by their first names, you'll get to know your lecturers by their first names, and it will be, a sense of seeing familiar faces that you're comfortable with, not necessarily getting lost in the crowd, which I think is really nice. So why bother doing a politics international relations degree? I'm focusing on this combination throughout most of the talk just because it's the most popular combination, but obviously these skills and things also apply to politics and history, politics and economics, politics and sociology, all of those different combinations of degrees that you might want to do. Well, I mean, I think the obvious thing that goes kind of with any degree to a certain extent is independent work skills and research skills. That you will get with any kind of subject area. What I think politics international relations is really good at is the analytical and evaluation skills. So you learn to think critically. You're not just learning stuff for the sake of being able to do a knowledge dump. You're learning it so that you can evaluate that information, understand other people's arguments, critique other people's arguments, come up with your own arguments in ways that are understandable to the average person on the street, not just other academics and other students. And these are really important skills for the workplace. These are things that both public and private sector employers will be looking for when you leave university. And the way you communicate them is conveyed in the degree and taught in the degree in quite a diverse way as well. So it's writing, of course. You'll be doing essays and things of that nature, portfolios, policy documents, but you'll also be communicating these ideas verbally in class and maybe even assessments. One module might ask you to do a presentation. There's a colleagues module that even asks students to do a podcast in pairs and things like that. So you'll be learning all of those skills for the modern work environment that do require you to have a kind of marketing mindset and a media mindset as much as kind of more traditional ways of conveying information. And I think most importantly for me is global mindset. So what we might call soft skills rather than hard skills. There's lots of evidence to suggest that employers are relatively comfortable about their ability to teach you hard skills. So if you go and work in finance, if you go and work in a consultancy, if you go and work for the civil service, to some extent, they will teach you the hard skills you need for that job in the first couple of years of working there. Say if you do an internship or something like this. But what they say that's more difficult once people are at that age is teaching them soft skills about cultural awareness, about how history has shaped the way the Chinese might do business, or the way India does business, or the way Nigeria does business, about being able to put yourself in the shoes of other people from around the world. And I think politics and international relations, it goes without saying, in conjunction with degrees like history and so on, are really, really good at teaching people that from a young age, getting them to think about that from a young age. And so you go into the workplace with a sort of advantage over students who maybe have done business studies, because business studies is a slightly more narrow field in what it teaches you. And that will be really, really valuable when you're involved in a negotiation with a business from China, or looking to merge with a business from India, and this kind of thing. So this is just to give you a sense of the full range of degrees we offer. So as I've said, I'm focusing on politics and international relations, but you can see there's actually lots of ways you can cobble together these courses in a way that suits you best. So one thing to bear in mind is the ones at the top are the ones that are the genuine 50-50 degrees. So politics and international relations is 50% politics, 50% international relations. Politics and economics 50-50. So half of it will be taught in the business school by professors and lecturers from economics and business studies. Those ones at the bottom are not necessarily 50-50. So the law degree with politics is actually just a law degree, and you get to do one module of politics per semester. And modern languages and politics, you can actually, it's a bit of a sliding scale. So you can do 50-50, or you can do 75% languages, 25% politics, if you like. But all of the other joint degrees in the top list there, with the exception of obviously politics on its own, international relations, because they're single honours degrees, are 50-50, that you'll get taught exactly 50% credits from one, 50% credits from the other. The thing to bear in mind with this is you're not to get too tied up in knots about which one to choose. So if you decide to do, say, politics and economics, and you come and join us, if within the first couple of weeks you decide, you know what, the economics is a bit too maths heavy, I'm not really enjoying it that much, you can drop it and just do politics, or do politics and IR, or some other combination. So because all of those degrees are managed by the School of History, Politics and International Relations, and all the degree entry requirements are more or less the same, we will be quite flexible in terms of allowing you onto other degree choices. What you can't do is drop the politics side and then just go and do economics, because economics is actually managed by a different school. So they might let you in if you're lucky, but that's not something we can guarantee. But the other way round is generally fine. So my advice would be is to go in with the joint degree you want to do. If you decide that you don't want to do it, we can just put you on politics or international relations, or just history or something like that, if that is what you would like to do. So how do these degrees break down? So there's usually a mixture of core and optional content in all of them. The idea behind that is that the core content is getting you all up to speed. So I'd say only about half of our students, when they come to us in first year, have actually done politics at college level, whether it's A-level, baccalaureate, that kind of thing. So what the core modules do is basically get everyone reading from the same hymn sheet in terms of having the basic knowledge, the basic conceptual background, the basic arguments, and so on. So in year one of the politics and IR degree, one of the core modules will be Introduction to Politics, which is run by me. Another one will be Key Concepts in International Relations, which is run by my colleague Jamie Johnson. And those are the key introductory modules to both politics and international relations. Outside of that, you then get into options, what you want to do based on what staff interests are and what staff availability is. So you can see in years 2 and 3, it mostly becomes optional. It's really up to you what you want to study. And that could be anything from, race and political theory with me. It could be a module on feminism. It could be politics in the global south. It could be a module on animal rights and a module on nuclear deterrence. Pretty much anything you can think of in terms of what research is being done in politics and international relations, you have the option of taking. The only core element in the final year is the dissertation. So that's 10,000 words of your own project, your own set of research questions, your own area you want to work on, your own opportunity really to be a kind of mini academic in some senses. You're not just reading what other people have done, you're doing your own research, collecting your own data and so on. And you'll be assigned a member of staff with general expertise in that area who every fortnight will have a meeting with you more or less to kind of make sure you're on track, that give you tips on what to look at, give you advice on how to structure a dissertation, how to write up a chapter, that kind of thing. So it's a really nice opportunity to kind of develop a passion project in a way. And I tend to find that students enjoy the dissertation element of their degree more than anything else, because it really is something that's very special and personal to them. So it's a really nice opportunity to kind of finish the degree on a high in that way. So just to give you a sense of like the really wide range of stuff we research and teach, this is a selection of some of our optional modules from year 2 and 3. And you can see there's a mix there of things that you probably expect from a politics and international relations degree, and then maybe stuff that you didn't expect. So the Cold War, I think, is something that won't surprise anyone when you're talking about international relations. American politics and the American presidency is probably not something that surprises people when you're talking about politics. But then things like animal rights, it's obviously becoming a big topic linked to things like environmentalism and ecological concerns in the 21st century. But we happen to have, one of the world's leading philosophers in animal rights, Steve Cook, who's published widely on the subject, also teaching modules on that particular topic, if that's what interests you. And it's really, really exciting because you're getting essentially his research from him before he even publishes it, right? So it's coming to you as students from the horse's mouth before even other academics are getting it in written form. So this is what's really nice about specialist and optional modules. You're getting it from academics before they've even had a chance to deliver it at conferences and things. So more, perhaps less typical subjects. Violence and non-violence. My colleague Melanie works on forms of civil disobedience and forms of feminist politics in Latin America that use both violence and non-violence as a way of doing their politics. So that's getting into the really interesting elements of why people choose to engage in these different styles of political activism and what it means. Counter-terrorism from someone who used to work in intelligence studies in Northern Ireland and all of that kind of stuff. So all of these really, really diverse and interesting topics. And often is that even if you're not interested in them particularly at the moment, or they've not occurred to you at the moment, when you encounter lecturers in year 1 and year 2, you'll get a sense of what it is they work on, what they're interested in, and you might then develop interest in certain areas, which you can then pursue through the degree, through these modules, and they might even inspire you to a dissertation topic, which you then do with that member of staff. So as a medium-sized university, I think Leicester actually offers a really nice wide range of things there that are both traditional and a bit more critically minded around race, animal rights, feminism, all of that kind of stuff. So this is really, really important. I think students, before they get to university, often think that all teaching's done like it is in this picture on the left here. It's a lecture, you're sat there making notes, talked at for the most part, and then you go away and do a load of reading, and then you might come back in a class that's a smaller group of people, maybe 20 people, and then you're kind of being pointed at to answer questions. That might be 1 week of your time at university or your time in a particular semester, but actually the way you learn is much, much more diverse than that. So depending on the member of staff, in a seminar 1 week, you might have a role play, you might have a debate. Usually you'll be doing some element of kind of group discussion and group activity before the member of staff actually asks people to feedback. So you're not often being put too much on the spot, to answer questions on your own. It's actually a much more constructive, active learning process at Leicester. And if that's the type of learning environment you think you'd benefit from, then again, I would make sure you go to a lot of open days and ask lots of questions about how people actually teach at that university, because different universities do still approach it a little bit differently. There are more universities that have some have more coursework than exams, some have more kind of independent study hours than face-to-face teaching, some have more lectures than others, and so on. And if you need that kind of contact time, if you need that sort of ability to speak to people in group environments and feedback without being put on the spot all the time, then Leicester's a good place for you. But so are other universities, and you should kind of shop around and look around and do your research about how they teach. We do have a couple of trips in the module as well. So if you do the parliamentary studies module in year 3, you will go to Parliament. With Professor Rick Whitaker, who has lots of contact at Parliament because he's he's seconded to Parliament at the moment to work with them. So you get to speak to the parliamentary clerks who work there, maybe even some MPs, and that kind of thing. It's a really nice trip to get a sense of how Parliament works, but also just a nice trip to London. So after you've done Parliament, you get to kind of spend time with your friends in London for the day as well. Another thing I think that students worry about is how many exams are you going to have to do. There's currently only 2, I think, in the whole 3 years at Leicester. I think one of them is actually in an optional module. So really, you don't have to worry about exams too much. Most things are coursework. So you'll get given the questions right at the beginning of the module. There'll be 2 assessments per module, and the first one won't be for 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks, and the last one won't be for 10 or 11 weeks. So you have plenty of time to prepare that question, get feedback from your tutor, plan it. Maybe they'll even look at a plan and give you feedback and that kind of stuff. And then there's all sorts of other assessments as well. So I mentioned a podcast, there are presentations, there are policy portfolios, all of this kind of stuff that is not you're stuck in a room and you're given 2 hours or 3 hours and you've got to just get it all down on paper without looking at any reference materials. We don't think that's a particularly good way of getting students to think critically about a topic. Really, you need time to kind of mull over stuff to do that. So most of our assessments are geared in that direction. And as you can see, you're not necessarily spending 40 hours a week on campus either. So I think there is this sense that most students think they're going to be, in lectures or classes 9 to 5 every day, 5 days a week. Actually, the contact hours are roughly about 12 hours a week. So in year 1, you might have 8 hours of lectures and then 4 hours of tutorials. And then outside of that, you're doing mostly independent study. You might have been asked to do a bit of reading. You might have been asked to prepare a kind of debate with some of your classmates. So you're doing that. You might be preparing a presentation, all of this kind of stuff that can be done in the library with your friends, back in your own accommodation, at home if you're still living with your parents, all of that kind of thing. So actually there's room to fit in a life around on-campus, university learning time. Lots of people will, juggle a part-time job alongside this. Students will be heavily involved in student union, sports, extracurricular activities. So it's not that kind of onerous in terms of, bums on seats in classrooms. So yeah, don't worry about that too much. But again, do look into this at other universities and how they kind of manage the balance of it week in, week out. This is, perhaps a bit dry, but I think very important. Going to university is stressful, right? I mean, you're living away from the family for the first time. You're making new friends. You might be juggling a job on top of doing all of these kind of, learning activities and assignments and so on. A lot of people do get stressed out by the experience, even if they don't, have any pre-existing challenges coming into university. So Leicester's put a lot of emphasis on student support. You'll get assigned a personal tutor when you arrive at the university who'll be a member of staff. They may not even be a member of staff that teaches you in that year, but there will be someone there who's purely there for your kind of support, pastoral support, making sure you're doing all right and so on. And the relationship is very much like it might be with your, GP or a solicitor at your age, because you'll be 18, you're an adult. So the discussions between you and your personal tutor are perfectly confidential. You can rely on them not to share information with anyone if you don't want it to be shared with anyone. And it really is a way there for you to get support when you find that you can't manage on your own. So it might be related to accommodation, might be related to the people you're living with, might be because you're struggling with work, might be that you do have a learning difficulty or so on, and your personal tutor will help you cope with that by signposting you to other services within the university, maybe helping you kind of work through a piece of an assignment that you've got and how best to kind of strategize around finishing it on time, and all of this kind of stuff. And in conjunction with the Careers Service, the university's won awards for its pastoral support over the last few years. So, while all universities offer this on some level, Leicester's put a lot of effort into making sure that we offer quite a good quality of student support throughout your 3 years at the university. So very, very important, obviously, employability. Most of you, I imagine, are going to do a politics degree, but then not stay on and do something silly like become a politics lecturer like me. You're going to go on and work in the private sector, work in the public sector. You might even work for Parliament and for MPs and so on. So you probably want to know, what is this degree actually leading to after your 3 years with us or 4 years with us, if you do a year abroad. Well, the first thing is 94% of our graduates are in further education or full-time employment after leaving the university and graduating with us. So that's a really, really good percentage of people who are, getting on with their lives, earning money, getting other qualifications they need to get their foot on the career ladder. And you can see from the list of professions there or kind of career paths there that really the world's your oyster to some extent. I always say that degrees like politics, international relations, history, so on, sociology, they leave a lot of doors open. And they're they're employable in areas that lots of employers are looking for the skills in those degrees. So you might not end up becoming a GP, you might not end up becoming a nuclear engineer or something like that, but all of these careers like finance, political consultancy, business consultancy, professional services, marketing, teaching, all of these things are jobs that our graduates have gone into. Most of these companies do often come onto campuses for careers events and are looking to speak to politics and IR graduates about potential internships and recruitment programs and so on. So really, the world is your oyster to some extent, and part of the skills you're learning on politics and IR is that global mindset, all of those soft skills that these employers are looking for as well. So we try and get you to think about how to show those on a CV or sell those on a CV or a cover letter from day one, through things like the Leicester Award, through things like student study workshops and so on, which are kind of encouraging students to think about their degree, not just in academic terms, but in employability terms as well. And as I mentioned, the career service will help you with this from day one as well. So the fun bits while you're at university, I mean, we're really, really keen that our students should have a really sociable experience from day one, that they should speak to each other from day one, that they should, be hanging out even if they're not in the same modules and the same classes from day one. So our student experience member of staff, or the person who's in charge of student experience, Jen, who you can see on the left there, she does a really, really good job of, starting film nights from pretty much Freshers Week. We even have a politics and IR question time, so a bit like the BBC, where members of the student union sit on the panel, a member of staff is moderating them, and then you as new students at the university will sit in the audience and ask them questions about political issues of the day, and they will try their best to answer them. And it's just a bit of good fun. There's lots of pizza and food and soft drinks and stuff, so it's a nice opportunity for people to meet each other outside of kind of the city centre and that kind of thing. And it's really nice if you're not planning on staying in Leicester. So we have lots of students who commute from London and the surrounding areas who still live with their parents. So they're obviously, because they're not living in student accommodation, have less opportunities to socialise outside of student halls. So this is a way of getting them involved in stuff as well, that I think works really, really effectively. And we've had fantastic reviews from students about all of the stuff Jen's put on. So again, that's one of the things that I think having a medium-sized group of politics and IR students at the university allows us to do, that you really benefit from, because it makes the classroom experience more comfortable as well, that maybe bigger universities would struggle to do a bit more. So final slide before I open up to questions for James and Lavanya. Study abroad. It's something lots and lots of students ask about. I think it's one of those things that really, maybe university is your last chance to do something like this. Go abroad without any other worries in the world, for the most part. Just kind of spread your wings. As you can see from that list, and it's not even the full list of things we offer, but there is a very, very wide range of countries and universities you can go to if you wanted to do a study abroad between your second year and your final year. So pretty much anywhere in Europe, lots of places in Asia, South Korea, Japan are very popular options. A couple of places in Africa, South Africa is a very popular option. A number of places in North America and a couple of places in Latin America as well. So depending on, what your vibe is of the place you want to go. Maybe you have a language that you already know that you want to brush up on, which some students do. There's really lots and lots of places to choose from. We have a study abroad tutor who will help you set this up, and a study abroad office that can help with it as well. And there is funding available to help support students on travel costs and things like that. So it's done via the Turing scheme. How much is available varies between years, because the money's basically dished out by the government to universities, and then universities have to share it amongst a number of students who want to go. But often, actually, partly because it's a big deal to do an extra year of university and so on. Not a lot of students do it, so often there is money available, even if you don't think that you're someone who might be, from a background that would be entitled to it. Often students from relatively comfortable backgrounds still get access to the money because not that many students take up the opportunity. So if you're interested in it, it's something that's really worth considering. It can cost you effectively nothing, and actually some students have come back better off because they've worked while they're abroad as well to earn some extra cash. So particularly if you go to the United States, student jobs actually pay relatively well there. And if you haven't got any further expenses, you can come back with money in your pocket. So it can be really interesting experience in that way as well. The nice thing is as well that it's only pass fail. So by this point you're probably quite preoccupied about getting a first or getting a 2-1 in your final degree classification. If you do the study abroad, you just have to pass it to come back and do your final year and get that final good grade that you want. You don't have to worry about getting a first or whatever when you're in France or Germany. So it gives you the opportunity to enjoy the experience and not stress out about it too much. But yes, if you're interested in that, I mean, do drop us an email on vv81, which is just my email address, at leicester.ac.uk, and I'll put you in the direction of the study abroad office, and they can give you some more information. And of course, if you have any questions about anything else in the course as well, do drop me a line and I'll get back to you. Well, without further ado, I will hand over to James and Lavanya, who will answer your questions if there are any. In that case, James, do you want to kind of, because you're involved in student union-y stuff. Mm-hmm. So, that's something that I think often students, when they're applying for university, kind of have no clue about what a student union is or what it does. Did you want to just briefly go through what you've got out of it?
Absolutely. So, those who are familiar, a students' union is more or less what it says in the tin. Essentially, how I see it, it's a trade union for students, but at the same time, it's not, fighting for more wages, something like that, because that's not really what it does. But instead, it is a body that is laser focused on the student experience, improving the time at university for each of the students. So I'm the sustainability officer, which is a post that I got towards the end of first year. So I see a lot of the the inner workings of the union regarding sustainability, as well as that projects that I introduced, something like that. And really, it's a community where I can submit my own ideas, sure, but I can take up ideas from the student body as a whole, bring them to the SU, and see if. So another example, I am the co-chair, sometimes chair, of the Sustainability Network. So, that includes like the kind of top team in a way of students, mainly undergrads, when it comes to sustainability. So really, it's and we do encourage many and engage with us, because climate action at the minute is something that not many students have, I guess, time to do. So if you can integrate it into your university, that's, in my opinion, even better. Yeah, practically, I'm what's called a part-time officer, which is an officer that's elected through. It was elections, now might be changing. I don't know what the SU are thinking about that yet, but elected in my case, then trained up, and just really engaging with the inner workings of both the union and the union itself, and perhaps even Leicester as a whole, in order to to boost climate action across the region.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Yeah, you've been really involved from day one, and it's really nice to see you getting so much out of the union. It's been obviously members of staff are not heavily involved in it, so this is how we find out about what other students are doing. But it's been really good to hear all your exploits. And Lavanya, what about? I talked briefly about sort of the variety of stuff we do in class and so on. Did you want to just chat about what's the learning experience like at Leicester?
I feel like learning at Leicester is like very diverse. Like, it's not one seminar will be the same, and even if you are like there's 2 seminar leads for the same module, it's not necessary that both seminar leads will lead their seminars in the same way. I know that I'm in your seminars and we do a lot of like, I think we did the debate on, I think it was social contract from Burke's perspective, whereas I know my friends in Ian's modules were doing more reading work. So it's like, there's a lot of like differences between obviously the way teachers like basically leave their seminars, and I think like it's also a lot more interactive than people think. And I think there's this massive fear that you need this massive independence thing, that you're just chucked in the deep end and you're completely independent with no support. But I think coming to Leicester, I have had such amazing support, like from my personal tutor, you, Vic, but also like my other like lecturers, like emailing them my introductions for essays, just to know if I'm getting on the right step of things, or like even if it's just essay plans. Like I think having office hours has been so beneficial, and like I speak to my friends at other universities and they're like, I don't even know who my tutor is. Like my essay plans don't get checked. It's just we get told the assignment and that's it. So I think Leicester's good in like giving you that support system where you're still doing work independently, a lot more independently than you were at college or secondary school, but you are still being supported to make sure you're not going off the rails type of thing.
Good. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, that's and thanks for the plug of me as well. It's always good to. That's not why she's here, but it's always appreciate to hear that. I think Tasleem's going to just read out some of the questions in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Just got a quick one. Can you provide some advice on what to get involved with prior to applying to university?
Okay, I suppose that's one for me. What I would say is it's very interesting reading personal statements for students who apply to politics and IR, because they tend to they have a bit of a scattergun approach where they're trying to just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. So they're interested in everything from Parliament to the Ukraine war to what's, anything that's happening in the news. Like they'll probably mention the South Korea thing that's going on right now, if that's what's going on when they're writing it. What I would say is it's better to pick one thing that you're really interested in and seem passionate about it, then pretend that you're interested in everything under the sun, because it's even I'm not interested in everything under the sun, right, as a politics lecturer. So there's probably one thing that you're particularly passionate about, and I would focus on that. So it might be a book you've read about politics and you've said, oh well, this really interested me about feminism and so on, and I've been thinking about it, and I've seen some modules that you do on feminism and I'd like to learn about it. So that always comes across much more powerfully than kind of doing a list of everything that's going on in the world. In terms of things of getting involved in, I think one of those things, it's one of those degrees that I suppose we're more interested in the academic side of stuff. So I wouldn't say that doing Duke of Edinburgh or lots of sport is necessarily something that would make you stand out massively. But what I would say is if you're concerned about what happens with admissions, put it this way, is if you narrowly miss out on your grades, so say you're offered an A and 2Bs as your entry offer and you get A, B, C, what will then happen is that as the admissions tutor, I'll read your personal statement, and if you said, oh, I'm interested in this political stuff and I'm passionate about it, but then maybe I've also been canvassing for a political party, or I've been involved in political debates or something like that, that can then make me go, oh, okay, well, you know what, they narrowly missed out on their grades, but clearly they've got a passion for politics, clearly they're really interested in the subject area and so on. Let's let them in, irrespective of the fact they've missed out on one grade, because they're showing a lot of passion and commitment to the subject, which means across 3 years that they'll probably continue to improve and actually come out with a good grade, and so on. So that would be my advice. But I don't think it's necessarily true that you need to do, you need to be first 15 rugby player in order to get into university. Even when I was applying for university many years ago, when my teachers used to tell me that was really important, it wasn't really important. It's really about the subject, the grades, and whether you're showing an interest in it. So I would focus on that.
Can I add on to what you said, Vic?
Yeah,
if that's
sure.
Okay. I think when I wrote my personal statement, obviously I wrote about more, I had like a bit of everything. I know I did a UCL like web like online masterclass on humanitarianism, and it wasn't, I think people think that like you have to like almost say only good things about the subject, and I know that in my personal statement I did criticize humanitarianism, so I feel like it's okay to not say that you love everything about the subject. I know that I spoke about like the abuse of power because I read a book of of 21 Women in the 21st Century from Chakrabarti, but then I also then followed by criticizing global humanitarianism to show that while I am reading everything, there are aspects that I agree more with in politics and international relationship compared to like things I kind of agree with, like they agree and disagree. Like you don't have to agree to everything that you study type of thing.
No, absolutely, yeah. So I think kind of what I was saying about analytical skills as part of the degree and not just it being about knowledge. I mean, what you'll find is politics is about reading a load of scholars, but then saying, actually, you know, those ones I don't particularly like that much, or their methodology is wrong, or they've got blind spots or whatever. So yeah, if you can get that critical tone into your UCAS statement as well, would be really, really good. Bit more difficult. I mean, I don't see many. I mean, I didn't see Lavania's personal statement, but I think if I'd read that, I would have been really impressed, because most of them don't feel confident enough to do that at that early stage. But if you can, if there's something you disagree with and you say, actually, I want to come to Leicester because I think feminism is a stupid way of studying politics, we're not going to take that personally. We'll be like, okay, that student's got, some sort of courage in sticking to their principles and having an intellectual viewpoint and so on. So as long as you can justify it, it's absolutely fine. And we'll probably be really keen to have you.
Thank you both. Just conscious of time, just going to pop in one last question, and that is, what careers can one go into if they do politics and international relations?
So as I was saying, it's very, very open and broad. Mostly, if I was going to give the top 5 things that our students end up doing, often it's the law. So a lot of people will do law conversions as a master's degree after doing politics and IR. So all you really need to do a law conversion course is get a 2-1 in your degree, and then a law conversion course at another university will take you on to kind of do that 1-year conversion to become a solicitor or whatever you want. Another one is teaching. So a lot of people go into teaching. Another one is the civil service. A lot of people go into civil service, or aspects of politics that are kind of adjacent to that. So working for the council, MPs, etc. There's a lot of professional services. So that covers actually a very wide range of jobs. But if you think about those big companies like Deloitte and KPMG and so on that do like accountancy, management consultancy, financial audit, all of that kind of stuff, they often recruit politics, IR, history graduates as much as any other subject, and the key competencies we teach are what they're looking for. And then what was the other one? Yeah, things like marketing, all of those sorts of jobs that are kind of pretty mainstream private sector jobs that require good analytical skills, the ability to kind of convert large amounts of complex information into something pithy for a wider audience, good writing skills, sort of knowledge about the world, and so on. So yeah, it's really, really open-ended. It's not one particular thing that people go into, but as long as if it's a job that you find online, as most professional jobs are, they'll say we're looking for a good degree from a good university with a 2-1. That will be their category for entry, right? So if you're coming from Leicester and you've got a 2-1, the likelihood is that if you then put your best foot forward in the application process and say, well, look, I did a politics degree and these are the transferable skills I learned, you're going to be with a good chance of getting into that internship or work experience or whatever it might be. So yeah, there's a really wide range of things. I would basically consult the careers service if you've got a couple of things in mind as soon as you get to university, because it's important to cross things off. I mean, I found that when I was an undergraduate student, I wanted to do a law conversion, so that's what I was going to do. I actually did work experience in law and then thought, this is not really for me, and then obviously ended up just doing more and more study and ended up becoming a lecturer. But it's a useful way of like crossing things off, because those jobs, even though politics leads to all of them, are very, very different in what they do. So you need to kind of work out, what is it that excites you, what is it that interests you, and so on. There are such things as public affairs consultancies as well, which are very directly political. They're sort of basically PR just for politics. So you might represent the government, you might represent a foreign government or a company that's lobbying a government or something like that. Very direct skill transfer between the subjects, but there's not actually many of those companies around. There's probably only sort of 4 or 5 in the UK that do that in a big way. That was my plan B, but I also did work experience for them and decided that it wasn't for me. But yeah, those sorts of jobs.
Thank you, Dr. Vikram. And just let's take 1 minute just to answer this last one, which I think may be important. Can either James or Lavanya tell us what a typical day for a politics and international relations student looks like?
You broke up for a second there. Would you repeat that?
Right. I just wanted to ask what a typical day looks like for a student of politics and international relations.
I feel like me and James have very different days. I think because I'm more involved in like society stuff, but James has like the student union stuff. So I feel like if James tells us then I can quickly briefly go over mine. So that we have like 2 different days, just so that everyone knows that not every day is the same. James, do you want to go?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So my typical day, I suppose, is well, waking up obviously, and there's a sense of I know how urgent like my first thing of the day is, depending on how long I know it takes to get to campus, because you do it so often, you know how long it takes you to get into campus. I mean, I live in Opal Core, which is about 15 minutes away. I know it's a 15-minute walk, so I kind of plan my morning accordingly. You know, I go, if I wake up say 3 hours before my first lecture, I take it a bit slower. Obviously, if not, then it gets, you know, more fast-paced. But then I'm into normally at least 1 lecture a day, most of the time 2. Obviously, do the notes from that. In the interim, if I have 2, which is most days, I end up doing some notes, doing some pre-reading in between the 2, especially if the next lecture is on that topic. So it's kind of a double whammy of, you know, the information given. And so then normally what happens then is a seminar. Obviously, it very much depends on your own timetable, but normally then it's a seminar which you read for. And that's a really great way to discuss what you've read, and also really it's a debate without the kind of polarizing yes no kind of thing to it. It's very much a discussion group where and I've said this in a lot of ways, there is no such thing as a stupid answer, if that makes sense. So academic wise, that's basically it. But when it comes to being in the SU, occasionally I have some meetings which and as well as, you know, feeling that I'm making any kind of change, that also really helps. So if this isn't a plug for the Students' Union, I don't know what is. But regardless, after that, I do set myself a kind of limit as to how much I study in the evenings. Normally, if you have an outstanding reading, you can judge pretty well how much you want to do after that. I appreciate I got on, so I'll let Lavanya take over now. Sorry about that.
No worries. I think my day is like quite different. I think my busiest day is my Thursdays, because I'll have 2 back-to-backs on a Thursday morning, then a 2-hour break, and back-to-back, and then I'll have a netball match. So I think for me, like, yes, I do my readings, but I do my readings the night before. Lecture slides, I like to pre-write my notes, because for me, I feel like if I write my notes the night before from the lecture slide, I can focus on what the lecturer is saying in it. So I'm just like adding kind of like bubble notes, or like just like mind mapping it sort of thing. So yeah, do my notes at night, wake up probably an hour or 2 before the lecture, if I'm being honest, run to my lectures, go to my lectures, and in between socialize with friends, because I feel like it's having that balance that's really important. I know my Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays are my busiest, so I make sure that Wednesday, Fridays, I am taking time for myself, like meeting up with friends, because I feel like every day is different, but you want to kind of spread your days out so you're not essentially working yourself to like burnout. So I make sure, like, if I know my Tuesdays, Mondays, and Thursdays are going to be the busiest, I'll spend more time, I'll do less reading on those days and more socializing with friends in the evening, because I know I have the whole of Wednesday and Friday to catch up on my readings, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think even though you'd have like 6 people like you in your friend group doing politics and IR, it's not necessary that everyone will have the same timetable or the same day, because I know friends that have Fridays off, but I go uni Monday to Friday. So yeah, that's my day typically. I wake up, go to lectures, socialize with friends in between, go back to uni, and then do reading or meet up with friends afterwards or play some sports.
Thank you, James. And Lavanya, I'll pass on to Dr. Vikram to sign us out.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and I hope that answered most of your questions. I've put my email address in the announcement, so if you do have any further questions about anything, do just drop me an email, and I'm happy to get that across to you. And thank you so much to our 2 student ambassadors, Lavanya and James, who've been fantastic as always, and for giving up their evening for this. And yeah, hopefully we hear from some of you soon when the admissions come in. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, and best of luck again.